Speaking for the League, it's really wonderful to see so many community leaders here from the LGBT community, from the pro-Israel and Jewish communities. We thank you very much for coming. As you know, some of you may know, the mission of the ADL is to stop the defamation of the Jewish people and to fight for justice and fair treatment for all. And we've learned over a few years, in fact a few centuries, you can't get to A without going to B. And so one of our moving from mission to strategy is to work with other communities who have suffered the same kind of attacks on civil rights, subject to ignorance in the community, and occasionally subject to physical and mortal harm in the community. And again, unfortunately, the Jewish and LGBT community have those in common over recent memory. Now, no matter how you come to this issue of gays in the military, whether you're straight or gay, you've never talked to anybody who has served as active duty service in the military openly gay. You've never talked to anybody in the American military who served with other gay members. Well, tonight we're going to change that. All right, Sergeant Herzog has served in the Israeli military as openly gay, and is going to be expressing to us and communicating with us some of his experiences as a gay man in the Israeli military, in the IDF, and afterwards we'll have a chance to ask some questions. So again, on behalf of everyone, thank you very much. And Sergeant Herzog?
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much to Bruce for hosting this, and your lovely garden. And thanks so much for the introduction, Mark. This is not my first gay pride, nor my first gay pride march. When I was in the military, when I was still in basic training, and I was quite new, I served under the base commandant, Colonel Moshe Levy. And you might have seen later on, because during Operation Cast Lead, he became the commander of the Gaza Strip DCL, so he was quite frequently in the news being interviewed. He's a very tall and formidable man, insanely brilliant, and a scholar of Islam and Arabic, and a religious Jew. Can you hear me now better? Now? How's this sound? I'm good. I can project. So, serving under Colonel Levy, I found out, as one often finds out in basic training, that I was obligated to close the weekend, as one often does, on the base in training. Leaving the base during basic training requires a hospital visit. One does not get to leave. But I was already put out because 2 weeks before I had missed going home as well for the Eurovision finale that was being broadcast. Israel did not win, but I wanted to watch it. And I was even more upset when I found out I was going to miss the Gay Pride Parade in Tel Aviv, which was going to be on a Friday. So I drafted a letter requesting that he release me to go march. Shortly after writing a letter, I was called into the office with the commanding officers, along with a friend of mine who was serving in the same training camp. He was the other homosexual who was open at the time. And we were told then by the commanders that we were being released for 8 hours. We were to make sure to polish our boots, to keep our shirts tucked in, and to do the State of Israel and the Army of Israel proud when we marched in the parade, to have fun and come back. So I came back from that with a ribbon, a rainbow ribbon that I used to wrap my dog tags, which have to be covered at all times in the Israeli army to prevent reflection. And I served the end of my service wrapped in a rainbow I got from my basic training. So, what's Israel? Middle East. We have a large crowd from the ADL and StandWithUs and the Jewish Federation. Certainly most people know, but just to be sure, thanks to the generosity of JJ, I have a map, which we always like in the military.
Do you want assistance?
No, that's all right. Right, here's the state of Israel. Tel Aviv, my home. Jerusalem. And down here is Hebron, where I served in the army mostly. The state is the size of New Jersey. Quite tiny. And to give a bit of relativity, this is a map of the Middle East. All the black dots here are Muslim nations. Israel is that big. Right there. And surrounded by 22 much larger Arab nations. Israel was founded in 1948, the 5th of May, by United Nations resolution. We took over from the British Mandate of Palestine, which had been in place since 1918 at the end of the First World War. We announced our independence, and immediately following, all the neighboring Arab states declared war on the State of Israel. Since then, 2 have negotiated peace deals with the state. The others remain in a state of war, which is sometimes hotter and sometimes cooler, but nevertheless, war. Since its inception, Israel has fought in 7 wars and uncountable conflicts. Following the unilateral withdrawal from the Gaza Strip, more than 8,000 rockets, I believe, have been fired haphazardly at civilian populations, mostly in Sderot, but in all bordering Israeli civilian population. And as such, the defense of our state is very much a day-to-day reality that we have to deal with and are obligated to deal with. Immediately after the state was declared, the current Jewish volunteer military operations and organizations in place continued and were shortly united together under the Act of the Knesset, which created the Israel Defense Force, that we would have one military. Since then, until today, Israelis serve, all Israelis are obligated to serve a mandatory 3 years for men and 2 years for women, with of course an option for longer if you'd like, to serve in the IDF to protect one's country, which is a day-to-day necessity. The people who come to serve in the army come from all over the world, because Israelis don't just live in Israel, we get around. So we have people who have lived in far-flung countries, who have grown up all over the globe in diplomatic services, or parents who worked in high-tech moving, and we have people who lived all their life in one small village, who'd never left and never even come to Jerusalem, the capital. So we come from all over. We have Jews, Arabs, Druze, Bedouins, Christians, immigrants. We even have foreign people who come to volunteer to serve in the Israel Defense Forces who don't have Israeli citizenship. It's quite the melting pot, and I'm one of them. I'm Yossi, as Mark put so well, and I served my years after growing up. I'm from Tel Aviv. I lived in Britain, France, the northeastern United States, Tel Aviv, and around again. And I served my service in the Coordinator of Government Activities in the Territories unit, or the COGAT, as it's abbreviated. It is the unit which is responsible for the civilian needs of the Palestinian population and the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, for dealing with the international organizations that operate with the State of Israel in regards to the Palestinian population, and as the name suggests, for implementing the government policies that are taken at the highest level, and liaising with the IDF on the ground. I served most of my service in Hebron, and at the very end I was transferred to Tel Aviv, which is our military headquarters, sort of like the American Pentagon. So I went to the top then of the top offices of the unit. I served my entire service openly gay. I've known that I was gay since I was 12, and I told everybody else at the same time because I was so excited I couldn't possibly wait. I served, obviously, as I said, we have mandatory service for all Israelis, not just for heterosexual ones, and openly gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgendered people are as required and welcome to serve as are the heterosexual ones. Serving as a homosexual, I came in, and we call somebody who's new in the army in Israel a shokist, from the word shok, which comes from the word shock, which means we're in shock, and we're terrified, and we're scared, and we don't know what to do when someone's yelling at us, and our mother isn't around, and we don't know how to handle this. So I was very nervous when I first came in. I knew people would come from all over, and I had as many fears as I'm sure other people did. I was more international, and some people would come from a small village, and maybe it wouldn't make me comfortable, and I was scared, so I didn't step on then yelling about my sexual orientation. I very quickly befriended some people that actually turned out to be the most popular leader, strong physically, of the basic training camp. And they told to me, because I was clearly out to them, as they were my friends quickly, they said to me that if anybody ever gives you any kind of problem on this base for your being a homosexual, let us know, and we'll take care of them. I never needed them. I came out to my unit, bit by bit, and when I saw that nobody cared, I just told everybody, and still, nobody cared, no matter how much I did. It wasn't a shocking experience for people who would come from more cosmopolitan backgrounds and met other homosexuals, but there were also plenty of people who had never met an openly homosexual person in his or her life. And these people would ask me the same kind of questions with childlike curiosity that every LGBT person has heard before in his or her life from other heterosexuals who don't know what it's like to be gay. So we've heard questions of, women do nothing for you? And not even the breasts? And I've heard the questions of, well, how did you know? How did your mother take it? Fine, she didn't care. Again, nobody cared. I had people asking me, what was it like finding other gay people? If I was uncomfortable being around people who weren't gay. All the kinds of questions with a childlike curiosity that never came from a place of disgust, fear, or threatening. And my personal favorite was a nice young man from Ashdod, which is a port town in Israel, that asked me in the showers, so do you like this? Which is very nice of him to offer, but he was just kind of curious if it was his taste or not. And again, it wasn't a threat. He just wanted to know. The army provided for them, like it provided for me, an opportunity to meet people from Ashdod, because I'd been, I think, once in my life. I met Druze from villages in the north where I'd never been. And again, I met people who would come from Australia to volunteer in the army, who were going back to Australia. I was their opportunity to meet somebody, and there were others. To give the other side of the coin, what the army can be for LGBT people is it can provide us a safe place. Now, anybody who's LGBT knows, if he or she hasn't experienced it him or herself, how difficult it is to deal with coming out, and how hard it is to tell people, and even when one is just so scared, and then one comes out, and even if you're thrown out of your house, or if everybody says we already knew, it's still very scary. And so a lot of people weren't comfortable yet. One of my friends, Sagi, was such a person. He hadn't come out to anybody, he was very scared. He comes from Rishon LeZion, which is a city near Tel Aviv. He hadn't told a soul in high school, and I think he told his big sister once. But nobody knew, and he was terrified. And it was serving in the army, surrounded by people from all over the country, that he finally felt at ease to tell them, I'm gay. Nobody cared. We were happy for him. I was the happiest. He was afterwards ever in a search to find true love. He's now actually dating a lovely boy, because he's finished his army service, as have I. They're living in Tel Aviv. They're doing very nicely. He went home and told his parents. His mother was not surprised, but she was very proud of him in any case. It became a safe place for him to test the waters that his high school couldn't be for him, that his friends at home weren't able to be, but the new safe place of an army of the force was called in Israel often the great equalizer serving in the army. It brings us all together. It was safe for him. Not everyone's story can be as good as Sagi's. I had another commander in the army, one of my commanding officers in Hebron, who was responsible for our Arabic instruction, because my unit had to speak Arabic in dealing with the Palestinian population. He's Druze, and out of respect to him, I won't use his name. He lives in a Druze village in the north of Israel. The Druze are a people that many hundreds of years ago were an offshoot of Islam. They serve at their leader's own request in the Israel Defense Forces. They live in Israel and the surrounding countries. It's a very traditional society, very similar to Arab culture. Homosexuality is not an option. It is unacceptable. One is only Druze if both of one's parents are Druze and there's no conversion in. So it is very much a closed-off religion. A wonderful, nice people who make a very good food. This officer, after one night when I'd gone to for extra help with my Arabic, confessed to me that he himself was a homosexual. He's married and at that time had one daughter. I think he's had more since. He felt trapped and unsafe at home. He told me that he could not come out to anybody back at home because being small insular communities and small villages where almost everybody is somehow related to somebody else through cousins third times over, that any person he might feel safe coming out to might ruin it and result in his being exiled from his own community. So he told me, and he told other people in the army that he felt close to, and he told me he stayed in the army. He was serving much longer as a soldier and continued to serve because for him, it was a place to find solace. People who could appreciate, understand, sympathize with him when he couldn't possibly tell anybody at home. I have been most impressed, I think, with the ability, not just of my own state, to adapt on its higher level to the situations around it, to the high-tech world, to the agricultural demands of an arid desert country without any oil, but also to our own people, that in the armies who are from all over can adapt not only to an openly gay young boy who's become a fun club kid from Rishon LeZion, to an unhappy closeted Druze man who's trying to find some sort of solace and comfort for a situation. Now for the past 2 days, as has been mentioned, I've been working here at San Diego Pride, manning a booth on gay rights in the Middle East. That was done with the funding and support of StandWithUs, the Anti Defamation League, and the Jewish Federation. This is the second Pride that I've done out here in Los Angeles. I also was part of the Stand With Us pilot Pride back in LA, which was equally successful. We've been meeting people over the past 2 days, hundreds of people, who have come to our booth to learn about gay rights in the Middle East and Israel. Now, in most of these 22 countries, homosexuality is de jure illegal. In all of them, it is de facto unacceptable. In Morocco, the standard treatment is jail for life. In Iran, one has the option, if one is a man, of going through a forced sex change operation or being hanged slowly by a crane. Women receive lashings. Israel leads amongst the world among its progressive attitude towards LGBT rights. I told you I served openly in the army. This has been allowed in every echelon of the IDF since 1993. Before 1993, when I was 8, so I don't really remember it very well, everybody was allowed to serve, but in the higher post, if you were openly homosexual, you'd have to go through a secondary background check. That was seen as being too discriminatory. That was cancelled in 93. We recognize gay marriages performed abroad. We recognize the full inheritance rights of homosexual couples, full adoption rights, and Israel became the first country in 2006 that recognized the biological and adoptive same-sex parents of a given child to be the legal and equal co-parents of that child without preference for the birth parent. I have found the society to be as welcoming as its laws. As I told you, I've grown up in lots of countries. The homophobia that I've encountered has always been outside of Israel. I've never myself been through worse than somebody sniggering at my high heels. Nobody has dealt with me in ways that I found in other countries. I'm here with you now, thanks to the organization that I'm a part of, called StandWithUs. In Israel, I'm a student at Tel Aviv University. We have, in every university in Israel, a prestigious fellowship called the Stand With Us Fellowship. It's the flagship of Stand With Us International, which is based in Los Angeles. Its second largest office is there in Israel. It's an organization for Israel advocacy and education because we believe that peace can be achieved by educating people In Israel, we learn about public diplomacy, Israel advocacy, and how we can do something on an individual level to hopefully affect better education and change for the better. Out here, now that I'm with StandWithUs, there are 14 chapters in the world. The newest is here in San Diego, headed by the ever-talented, efficient, and very stylish Audrey Jacobs, who was good enough to very quickly organize our presentation in the StandWithUs, in the booth, that got together the community, because realized it was a great opportunity here for me to come and talk to people with other volunteers, that people could learn that, to me, which is so obvious, that apparently we found out here people didn't know. We have been, excuse me, we found that people that came to our booth often saying gay rights in the Middle East, there aren't any. And we told them, right, except for Israel. And they didn't know. And so we were happy to tattoo them, temporarily, which Audrey will happily demonstrate, with a pride flag with Israel there in the corner.
800. Yes.
800 people have been tattooed with this, and we have people from all walks of life, including a Lebanese man who came to me and asked for a tattoo, and 2 Egyptians who wanted me to put on the tattoo because they wanted their countries, they told me, to have the same kind of gay rights that Israel enjoys. I appreciate so much from StandWithUs the opportunity to educate and to share with people like you my story. If anybody's interested in signing up for receive information from StandWithUs, organizing and emails, do other events, please see Tally. Tally, stand up, would you?
Yes, of course. Oh,
that's Tally, who's the lovely assistant of Audrey. And she can come afterwards to give your email address too, and please do. I now am happy to get to the favorite bit of this, which is questions. So if people have any questions, I'd be so happy to answer them, really about anything.
Thank you.
Yes?
Thank you very much. You're very eloquent and you're very stylish as well, and I think you're a great speaker. I'm reading the book. Anyways, I'm reading a book, and it's talking about the only book on the bestseller list that wasn't about the conflict, and they're talking about the IDF, as you mentioned, as a melting pot. And I thought it was interesting that the authors mentioned that you know, I'm not Jewish, and I didn't grow up Jewish, but I know this concept chutzpah, and they talk a lot about how the IDF really is a wonderful, you know, place to display this, because there are these different social strata and everybody's on equal ground, as you say. So I was just wondering what your thoughts were, because, you know, the whole book is about how what a miracle economy and the startups in Israel, and what a success it's been, right? Startup Nation. Thank you.
That's what you're reading.
Audience participation.
All right.
And you know, I mean, it's very interesting, because they're saying, why are the Israelis so, have they been so successful? Well, it's because of things like the military experience, which breed, you know, a non-aversion to risk and questioning authority.
Thank you. I find chutzpah is a great word. Cojones, for people in San Diego to understand. Comes from Yiddish, but don't worry, we took it in Hebrew. It's chutzpah, I am chutzpan, she is chutzpanit. Lechafetz is to have chutzpah. So it's very important to know these words. Very integral part of Israel. What I was trying to explain is as I see it from the outside, countries like the United States, which have a volunteer military, are very based on discipline. It's a very hierarchical, disciplinary system, and that's how it works. The Israeli army is not. We obviously have discipline, it's a military, but more importantly than that, we have the sense of camaraderie. Now, we're led by 10 values of the IDF. It's called the spirit of the IDF, that we have to always carry with us when we're serving in the pocket that has our military ID. It outlines, and one of those is camaraderie. And we have to be, in theory, helping each other, working together, and striving to get to a new point. To get anywhere in the IDF, to get to any promotion or any kind of an officer's training, or to get to a difficult unit that has a lot of requests to get into it, one has to go through a several-day physical and mental testing, which is always done in a group, and is the candidates for the positions are observed to see how they can interact, who can think of the best way forward, and how he or she can bring his or her comrades along with him or her to that final destination. It's very important that we have to have a great idea, be a leader. A leader by himself is a crazy guy on his own. Then get people to follow us in a crazy idea. Then instantly you find people start joining on and you can move forward. That's how we learned how to work in the IDF. It's not necessarily waiting for instructions from above, it's figure out a better idea, bring it organized to someone ahead of you, and you can go ahead. And I completely agree with you. It leads to afterwards the fact that Israel has been able to give the world, in its 63 years of independence, that we've, as I said, been fighting non-stop conflicts, we've managed to invent, cell phone technology, the USB flash drive, cherry tomatoes, and other things, you're welcome, and other things that we can all enjoy. Because as soon as someone leaves the army in Israel, as we know the great equalizer, as I said earlier, this is then the opportunity. Don't stop thinking. Make a new way. Do it, and make everybody else believe that you're right. And if anyone has ever passed a kiosk in a mall by an Israeli who wants to sell him or her some Dead Sea products and thinks he doesn't want it, I think you've learned that we're pretty convincing. So, yes.
I have a couple of friends who are openly gay and they serve in the CIA. Do openly gay people serve in Mossad, or do you know?
Absolutely. Openly gay people have been serving in the Mossad from its inception. There are many documented cases, never by the Mossad, mind you, but by external sources, of Israel's use of homosexual agents to further our need to protect ourselves. We're a country who's been non-stop struggling for our own survival. If we lose one war, we're destroyed forever. So there's no time or place for our government security forces to discriminate amongst its own citizens, especially those who are brave enough to put themselves forward for perhaps dangerous missions being performed either within the country or abroad. Yes, DJ.
You've mentioned that you had been in LA and now in San Diego. Did StandWithUs send you to other cities in the United States?
Yes. StandWithUs is going to be organizing further talks, probably be in San Diego and Chicago. They're also rather keen on sending me at the beginning of the school year to campuses, because we think it's really important. The best place that this is being discussed is amongst the young. And as I told you, I met StandWithUs via its fellowship at the university in Israel. They're also very active in campuses here. So there's an Emerson Fellowship, which trains 42 young Americans in universities across the country in 42 different campuses, how they can become Israel advocates in their own place, on their own campus. So it's part of a program called Israel Soldiers Speak Out. And they want to bring soldiers from Israel, like me. My particular slant on it is more of as a homosexual Israeli serving in the army, but all kinds of Israelis. So we can tell you we really are a moral army, doing our best in a difficult situation, and give a face to these descriptions of what's an Israeli soldier. It's me, and it's other people who are not like me at all. Yes.
Yossi, you paint and I have to tell you, it's almost an idyllic picture. And I have to say to you, I know from my experience with Israel that there are elements, particularly the religious community, religious Jews within Israel. Maybe you can help us, first of all, explain the religious and their service in the military. But for those religious who do serve in the military, how much resistance is there? Does the military attempt to accommodate those in the religious community who do not want to serve with gays? Explain a little bit about that. Yeah.
What's being referenced here is that in Israel, as every citizen has to serve, it is possible, different reasons, one can defer one's military service. For example, I deferred because I was abroad. I was living in England, so I started serving when I was 21, when I came back to Israel. When there's a relatively high percentage amongst the ultra-Orthodox community of people who defer their military service because they're learning in Jewish seminaries, and they continue to defer until they are no longer valid for military service because of age, and they continue to learn throughout their adulthood. It's a hotly debated issue inside of Israel whether or not this is acceptable. I have to just give a bit to understand is that of Israel, 17% of the country defines themselves as very religious or religious/traditional. That leaves 83% who aren't. I think of Israel as a very secular country. It's a secular, modern democracy with the Jewish identity, but people of all religions or no religions are equally welcome. Those who do choose to serve in the military to accommodate our service, all food in the IDF is kosher. We observe the Sabbath in every way possible that does not endanger human life in accordance with Jewish law. And for the ultra-Orthodox, they have special units which have even higher standards of kosher so that they don't have to worry about potentially food that might be questionable for them at a lower level. Now, those units also organize better and try to do less of any kind of activity on the Sabbath to leave for the units who don't mind to do it on it for them. There has been historical opposition from the extreme right in Israel to the to LGBT rights in their open manifestation. I would say that, and what I mean is people are probably familiar with the protest against holding World Pride in Jerusalem, which was indeed held in Jerusalem in the end. But the religious right in my country wasn't comfortable with the idea. They didn't like that there should be a place that they saw as activity as sinful being celebrated in Jerusalem. It was. Like the United States, or any other democracy, we have differing views. And we have people who aren't very fond of homosexuals. Shocking, I know. But I think we're great fun. But some people don't like it. Bad taste. And they might step up and say they don't like a protest. This year, actually, we had our biggest gay pride ever in Tel Aviv last month. Over 100,000 people came. It was phenomenal. It ends in a beach party. It's great. And this year, the religious right decided we're not going to bother protesting it. Now, in Israel, the size of New Jersey, again, we have 4 gay pride celebrations a year. We've got Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, Haifa, and Eilat. You can go to all of them. I don't. It's too much. I don't feel like getting in a bus. But you can go to each and every one. We have enough. One might be rejected, of course, by one's community, and I can only imagine the difficulty and pain that people go through coming from a very religious background, like in most religions. A very, very fundamental religious background, having to come out as homosexual. But the state of Israel even provides a shelter. In Tel Aviv, there's a place called Beit Dror, which means House of Freedom. It's funded by the Tel Aviv municipality and the state of Israel. And it is a refuge for children, teenagers, adolescents who have to run away from home or are thrown out by their parents because of their sexual orientation or trans identity. They are provided a place to live, social workers paid by the state, attempted reconciliation with the families, and if it's not possible, helping these young people to build a life without their families. Because we know that not everyone's going to accept, you're completely right, some people don't like it. Some people aren't thrilled with it. I ended up not taking a place in Jerusalem because the roommates I was going to potentially live with weren't thrilled with the idea of living with an open homosexual, so I found somebody who was. It's not perfect. But we're getting there via our government having very progressive laws for it, the courts enforcing these laws, and maintaining that we're as much a citizen as everybody else and deserve the same protection. And what I would say is the most impressive thing is once these laws are declared or these judgments in courts are read out, the reaction amongst the religious right is usually, fine. It happened. No one cares. It happened. We didn't want it to happen, but it did. All right, next item. Let's move on. Yes?
You've worked with the Palestinians extensively, and there are gay Palestinians and transgender. And we know that a lot of Palestinians have come to this country to escape a variety of things, including if they were LGBT from what goes on there. What was your feel of what's going on in the new Palestinian country for the LGBT people there?
Now, technically, under the Palestinian Authority, which is the authority which is moving towards state-building institutions in the West Bank, homosexuality is legal. In practice, this is not the case. Palestinian police forces, which are the security operations of the Palestinian Authority, have been documented time and time and time again of murdering homosexuals. If the Palestinian police don't murder homosexuals, more often than not, it is the families of these homosexuals who find out. Even worse is what happens entirely in the Gaza Strip, which has been ruled since 2007 by the terrorist organization Hamas. And... That's it, 7?
Ask JJ. He's the
No, it's 2007. 2007.
7.
7 they took over. 5 was when we withdrew.
2007. All right. Okay. 2007, and also are rather active in the West Bank, so they're not just in the Gaza Strip. Now, according to Hamas, you have 2 options if you're found to be a homosexual. You can be killed. Oh, sorry, 3 options. You can be killed. You can commit a suicide attack against Israeli citizens to, they call it purging your moral guilt, or you can be exiled. There's actually a very good documentary, which is only in Hebrew, I'm sorry, called Jerusalem is Proud to Present, which documents, amongst other things, a Palestinian drag queen, homosexual, who lived in Ramallah and performed regularly in the gay bar The Shushan in Jerusalem. And the Hamas found out, gave him the opportunity, and they filmed his last performance as he had to then flee to, I believe, Germany in the end, because he did not want to carry out a terrorist attack. Israel provides political asylum for homosexual Palestinians who flee to Israel, looking for protection, because, like I said, in all of the Arab countries and communities, it's not an option to be a homosexual. A Lebanese man I met, Pride, explained to me that obviously it is illegal to be a homosexual in Lebanon, but he told me even those people who are homosexual in Lebanon, it can never be discussed, it can never be admitted, it is always by a quiet rendezvous with somebody else that gave a certain glance. It just never can be an open and proud thing that would lead the kind of pride celebrations that we enjoy here in San Diego or back in Israel. Yes?
Hi there, Kim Williams. I'm editor-in-chief of San Diego Gay and Lesbian News. Welcome to San Diego.
Thank you.
Is there a glass ceiling for gay and lesbians in...
I say no.
Great.
I don't feel any. And I'll tell you, we have openly gay members of the Knesset, which is the Israeli parliament. We have openly homosexual judges, like in the United States. We have top professors in the country. We have also what's being noticed more is in the past 5 to 10 years, the presence in the media of homosexuals has really skyrocketed. Homosexuals and lesbians, gay, bisexual, and transgender, I want to point out. I don't know how familiar you are with the Eurovision Song Contest in America because you don't get to take part. But if you did, it brought you ABBA, so you all know it. So, in Israel, we sent in 1999 Dawn International, who is a fantastic singer and happens to be a transsexual Israeli, and she won. We sent her back last year and she didn't, so I think she's done now. We sent her, happy and proud to. Since then, we've had an outbreaking on Israeli soap operas, on reality television shows, on Israeli newscasters and television presenters who have come out as homosexual. So there's just a more and more increase. So now I think the next people now going into the army aren't even going to have the kind of questions that I had, the innocent, nice, childlike questions of, well, what does it mean to be gay? Because we have so many documentaries on television about it, so much reactions to it, such a presence. Israel's president, Shimon Peres, has openly come to, he's not a homosexual, but though there are rumors about our prime minister's son, which I neither confirm nor deny, he has come to LGBT gatherings in Rabin Square in the center of Tel Aviv of tens of thousands of people who have come together, and he's come to support the State of Israel's support for the LGBT community, openly and proudly, while serving. Any other questions? I think that's all. I'll remind you to, if you'd like, to sign up to the mailing list with Tally. and to try and meet Audrey if you can, because she's something special. And thank you so much, people who brought me here.
He's been looking right into the sun this whole time, so that's very impressive. Thank you, Yossi. I'm Tammy Gillis. I'm the Regional Director of the Anti Defamation League here in San Diego. I want to thank you all for coming out. I've certainly learned from Yossi. I hope you all have learned something too. Stick around, have a drink. I want to thank Bruce specifically and thank you for opening his home for us. What a lovely event. So thank you so much. And